Welcome back to Monocle. Now, Samsung, Hyundai and LG might be South Korea's biggest exports, but millions would argue that the real power brands are BoA, Girls' Generation, Epic High and Super Junior. In the global soft power stakes, Korea's pop music industry is perhaps the country's most potent export. Jonathan Openshaw reports on K-pop's staying power.
Korean music first exploded across Asia in the 90s. The next decade of blistering internet development placed Korea at the forefront of the digital revolution and ripe for digital plunder. Online music portals responded with drastic measures, locking down the local market and cutting prices to as low as 5 cents per song. But with the rise of social media, the industry is finding new hope in the ever-increasing number of fans clamoring for Korean music on the internet.
It's not just about the numbers, but where we're getting those numbers. The top 3 K-pop blog sites, fan sites in English, they generate more web traffic than Korean music portals in Korean in Korea. When you look at Twitter, on any given day, a Korean pop star will be a top trending topic. Primarily for a lot of the top artists, the bulk of their traffic is not coming from within Korea.
The fervour of homegrown fans sets the bar high. Sub-zero temperatures aren't going to keep these girls from catching a glimpse of superstars G-Dragon and T.O.P. here to release singles from their latest project. At 22 years of age, they're already 2 of the most recognisable faces in Asia.
Korea as an entertainment exporter is really, right now, very significant. Pretty much every market that MTV is in, I would say that Korean content is really driving ratings, program sales. It's really connecting to audiences. Sometimes it's really hard to find one US hit that's going to work everywhere in multiple cultures. For a youth audience, it's really difficult, whereas for us, Korean content is equal to anything that the US is producing right now.
However you look at it, people seem to be feeling a sense of discovery and mystery about Korea. It feels like they're really seeing us in a positive light.
Right now, to know lots of fans around the world are listening to music from our tiny country, it's got to have a huge effect on the Korean music scene. But as the situation changes very rapidly, the scene's got to develop just as fast.
For the first time ever, a major pop act has chosen to sidestep traditional broadcasters and go directly to YouTube to debut their music video.
YouTube right now is the best vehicle for us to reach our core demographic audience, which is young people of the world, not just Korea. There is no boundaries or borders anymore with the internet. We no longer have to rely on the big TV stations or like big radio stations. Social networking has been the vehicle of choice.
In analog era, even if they are successful in Korea, they didn't have access to global audience. That's a whole another industry. So only way they can go outside of Korea, they are selling their right to another entity in that country. Social network service actually get rid of those boundaries of the country. Now there is only one music market, which is global.
This growing awareness of a larger, more global audience has realigned the industry from the bottom up.
A lot of things have changed. In the early 90s, for example, if somebody from the U.S. calls our office and says hello, our receptionist would hang up because they couldn't communicate, And that was kind of the way it was back in the day. Now you got a whole international staff and, a lot of people are English speaking and we're more international in terms of business structure. In terms of creativity, you're dealing with the international market, so the music itself has progressed to sort of meet that need. It's become more global. It's got basically the elements of pop for what it is,
In the last 5 years, you notice a huge improvement in the quality of the songs, the performance, the music videos, the styling. I think, the Korean as a society are really great at studying studying success models and really adapting those success models and creating something really great.
Through a lot of trial and error and perhaps maybe more misses which have created hits, a lot of the top Korean songs that not only do well here in Korea but beyond Korea all seem to share similar characteristics. Although music is very much an oral experience, I think what makes K-pop so appealing at the moment is it's actually also a visual experience. The power of things like YouTube, music videos has gone through a bit of a renaissance in ways very unexpected. If you look at a lot of the biggest K-pop hits, yes, they had great-looking music videos, but what made those great songs really take off was actually the viral videos. The videos that weren't even made by the artists or by the management or by their label. It was made by the fans. And so, for instance, when a hit song that not only has sort of the catchy beats and the catchy chorus, but also have the catchy dance moves, and you start seeing people from all walks of life copying those moves, you know you've got something. Korean management companies, they are not only able to claim the copyright on the songs that are being used on these videos, but more importantly, they can attach ads and monetize it.
As the global music market shifts from a tangible product to a digital one, the very nature of what the industry sells is changing. With so much content instantly accessible across the world, acts succeed not by selling music, but by selling sensation, a product that readily crosses language and cultural barriers.
The cold, hard reality right now is music is actually no longer the business. If anything, it's become a business card. If it becomes popular, it leads to other opportunities. That is where they make money.
I think if you're working in music, if you're a group, then it's really creating your brand is your core. And a lot of Korean society, I think branding of their groups, that's one thing they do really, really well and really much better than probably most people. I think it's what the Americans used to do well. Really harks back to the Madonna, Michael Jackson days of superhero pop performers. That's what sort of gets people talking, and in an age where chatter is the main currency, then that's what you've got to do.
The second wave of Korean music has taken a prominent global position thanks to social media. How long this wave lasts will depend entirely on how those artists and tastemakers continue to adapt to the mercurial whims of technology and culture. In Seoul, for Monocle, I'm Jonathan Oakenshaw.
And now I'm joined by culture editor Robert Bound. Rob, you spent a lot of time in Korea. I think you like the K-pop scene. Most important question, if you were going to be a pop act, you want to reach global fame, do you need 9 girls in very short hot pants? Because that seems to be the Korean K-pop formula.
I think that's where the Beatles went wrong, by not being 9 hot women. Yeah, exactly. It does seem to be, there's a lot of visual, I think as we saw in the film, there's a lot of visual to Korean pop. As much as there is, as much as you're hearing it, your eyes are popping out at it.
Well, at the start, it was interesting how the film looks at, of course, just the boom in social networking, how it's been able to, of course, get the message of these bands not just across Asia but also around the world. But the other side sort of looks at that perhaps the Koreans are doing it better than America, that they're packaging these bands, in a far superior way. So is there something sort of, techie one side but sort of retro on the other about the whole thing?
I think there kind of is. I mean, as we've seen, if a country could be a laboratory for the future of pop music, it might just be South Korea. And it always was America. We always looked to America for the future. But the authenticity game is what America thinks it's taken up. Things are packaged, though, as being authentic. Whereas I think the Koreans and Asian pop music, people want to be entertained more than they want it to pretend that it's rootsy, I guess.
I mean, Korea Incorporated has long been criticized when you look at sort of, the major car companies, of course, the electronics companies as well, that they were in a copying game a decade ago. And then you really sort of hear the last sort of 3 years that a lot of these brands, they have their own voice. They advertise in their own way. The product design is authored in a unique way. Do you think also that maybe if we would have looked at these Korean acts 5 or 6 years ago, they were replicating what we saw with J-pop in Japan? And is there a degree of originality now, do you think?
Absolutely. I think Korean pop's more exciting than Japanese pop. I think it's the market leader in that area, and it's phenomenally exportable. You know, the Korean diaspora in the US, for example, that bleaches out into the wider US market. Korean pop music is something that is fantastically exportable, I think, more so than its competitors, I guess. And it's strange to talk of competitors, as if they are companies, as if they are brands, but they almost are.
Yeah, it's interesting that the one point that the gentleman makes in the film is that sense of just the change with English, and it's something that we don't see in Japan. In many ways, a lot of the biggest acts have sort of remained within those islands. But anyone who sort of spent time in Korea, even the last 2 years, every time you go back, I find when I go back for meetings, there's just more people. You don't need interpreters anymore. Everybody speaks English, and obviously it's the lingua franca of pop. No.
Absolutely, and it's Korea is not culturally protectionist like Japan can sometimes be. There's a lot of secrets that still need to be told about Japan, as we know. But Korean pop is very much it's very much arms stretched around the world. That's a nice pop metaphor.
Absolutely. For one of the maybe Korean MTV. is it also sort of moving away from sort of the pure sugary side as well? I'm wondering if there is some sort of change, that it is going a little bit more indie, that there's also a different sound, because a lot of it was even what we saw in the films, a lot of it's quite saccharine.
Yeah, I mean there is that 9 girls in hot pants kind of Korean pop.
Yeah, just looks great, didn't she?
So it's just in my head. But there's a festival circuit growing up in Korea, and there are strummers, there are singer-songwriters. There's a bit more of a kind of campfire vibe again, which again is something they've probably borrowed from the West Coast, from the US, and it's come back to them. Yeah.
And it's interesting as well because also Korea does not have a radio scene, so it jumped to the net right away, which is because when you talk to anyone about it, what is the KCRW of Seoul, and people say, well, there isn't one.
Yeah.
It's sort of just a mixed bag of kind of rather bizarre channels.
It's weird because the Korean pop music is so interesting because basically Koreans grew up listening to American Forces radio from the bases that were around Seoul, and that infiltrated the pop music. So there's a lot of kind of Korean rock music in the 60s and 70s, but radio in Korea is conservative and quite boring, whereas it jumps straight to the net and suddenly it's completely international. You don't need to tune in to something local. It's the whole world's tuning in.
I mean, do you think that we see, in the same way that we've seen these major corporations obviously go completely global, these acts are going global, do you think there will also be an era of the major Korean entertainment company where we could see them buying up media properties elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, the Koreans have a very kind of completist attitude to their kind of pop branding. Everyone is styled.
I think all of corporate Korea.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's real sort of Svengali culture, maybe like it was in the UK and the US in the 60s and 70s. That kind of, the manager is the boss. There's a lot of grooming, there's a lot of styling, there's a lot of marketing. That's all part and parcel of. It's as much part and parcel of it as the music itself.
Does it go hand in hand, because there's an incredibly powerful film festival with the Busan Film Festival as well, which has really become a must-see on the international film festival calendar. Do they really go hand in hand? I mean, and it's does that really create a cultural force for the country, or do you think they're also sort of quite separate and distinct in a way?
I think so. I mean, earlier in this series we were talking about Art Basel in Miami and the kind of imprint that's left on the city, and I think the same thing. Korea is such a small country that the pop industry and the Busan Film Festival are two things that are real pillars of pop culture and bring a lot of people, a lot of interest and a lot of expertise into that country that then that country can export out again.
It's probably time for you to go and listen to a bit of A Girl's Generation, right?
I'm going to be watching the video.
Robert Baum, thanks very much. Next week on Monocle, we're in Japan to look at the rise